After the downfall of Númenor, Elendil led his people as refugees to Middle-earth. They made landfall in Eriador, where the exiled king established the northern kingdom of Arnor, while his sons, Isildur and Anarion, wandered further and founded the southern kingdom of Gondor. Before long, what began as a few outposts at Belfalas and Pelargir soon emerged as one of, if not the greatest kingdoms of men in Middle-earth. By the end of the Third Age, the honour, might and dignity of Gondor was perhaps described most eloquently by Boromir. Believe not that in the land of Gondor the blood of Númenor is spent, nor all its pride and dignity forgotten. By our valour the wild folk of the east are still restrained, and the terror of Morgul kept at bay, and thus alone are peace and freedom maintained in the lands behind us, bulwark of the west. Welcome to our latest episode on the armies of Middle-earth, in which we will explore the martial culture of the Kingdom of Gondor during the Third Age. At its zenith, the realm of Gondor extended north to the field of Celebrant and the southern eaves of Mirkwood, east to the inland Sea of Rhûn, west to the Grey Flood, south to the River Hannon, and along the coast to the peninsula and haven of Umbar. Gondor was divided between several semi-autonomous regions. Moreover, the kingdom established spheres of influence beyond its borders at certain points in its history, which sometimes drew it into conflict with its neighbours. Its great cities included its contemporary capital of Minas Tirith, Dol Amroth, the princely seat of Osgiliath, the ancient capital of Pelargir, the great haven of Minas Ithil, and finally Linhir and Tarnost. In addition to these major urban centres, Gondor also possessed a plethora of fortresses and outposts to watch over Mordor. From its inception, Gondor was governed by kings, who interpreted and administered ancient laws but did not create them. The kings descended from the House of Elros. This line was nearly broken several times during multiple succession crises before the monarchy finally collapsed with the death of King Eonar. Prior to this, King Romendasil I had established the position of steward, a regent chosen for their trustworthiness and lack of lineage to the House of Anarion, to govern the kingdom in the monarch's absence. The steward acted as the king's chief advisor and governed during the king's absence, illness or transition. The office of the Steward of Gondor became hereditary during the tenure of Húrin of Emin Arnen, a steward for King Minadil, after which subsequent stewards were chosen from his lineage. The title of steward became hereditary during Steward Pelindur's time and persisted until King Elessar. Kings and stewards were responsible for major projects, administering justice, forging diplomatic alliances, administering oaths, and using the Palantiri. On significant domestic or foreign issues, the stewards consulted the Council of Gondor, a political body composed of lords and captains. Gondor's political landscape was divided into several fiefs, each overseen by a lord, who owed allegiance to the king or steward, providing the realm with food, resources, and soldiers. Ultimate command of the armies and navies of Gondor rested with the king or the steward. The military was organized into a system of captains, with the supreme leader holding the title of Captain of Hosts. Frontline commanders were known as Captains of Gondor, or when coordinating with allies, Captains of the West. The Captains of the Outlands, comprising noble leaders from southern fiefs, commanded their troops in times of crisis. Important titles included Captain General, famously held by Boromir, who likely oversaw the other captains. Additionally, Boromir and his brother Faramir served as captains of the White Tower, hinting at an honorific title. Gondor's military structure resembled a thematic system rather than a feudal one, akin to the real-life army of the Byzantine Empire or the Anglo-Saxon Fyrd. Land was granted to farmers on the condition that they provide loyal soldiers. Prince Imrahil was the captain of Belfalas, but held the title Prince of Dol Amroth, indicating that fiefs were not inherited, but were territorial designations. The captains of the Outlands were also not feudal lords. Instead, their soldiers were recruited and supported by the state, leading to a loyalty focused on Gondor itself. While these soldiers were motivated to protect their homes, they were also trusted to defend Gondor as a whole. Much like in the Byzantine Empire of our world, the thematic system of Gondor would see the king or steward call upon the fiefs to send a portion of their strength for foreign campaigns to defend the realm in times of crisis, while leaving the majority of their forces to defend their fief. During the War of the Ring, the captains of the Outlands led 2,000 men to defend Minas Tirith, a tithe of their strength, as most of their men were needed to guard against the Corsairs of Umbar. Forlong the Fat was the Lord of Lossarnach, and led a contingent of 200 well-armed men wielding battle axes. Deverin, the son of the Lord of the Ringlow Vale, led 300 foot soldiers. Duinhir and his sons, Duilin and Derifin, led 500 bowmen from Morthond. Galasgil, the Lord of Anfalas, led a long line of men scantily equipped, except for the men of his own household. Hiluin the Fair led 300 gallant green-clad men from Pinath Gelin. Lastly, the Prince of Dol Amroth, Imrahil, led a company of knights in full armour and 700 men-at-arms. This variety in troop composition enriched Gondor's military capabilities, offering flexibility in defence but somewhat limited offensive operations. Historically famous conquerors like Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar organised their armies into specialised units to gain battlefield advantages, a strategy reflective of Gondor's military system, which was regarded as optimal for a pre-modern society. In TA 1944, Gondor created two armies, the Northern and Southern armies, to confront the Wainriders and Haradrim. The Northern army was organised with a vanguard, right wing, left wing and centre, each led by a captain. King Ondahur commanded the centre, alongside his son Artamir, while Captain Minotaur led the right flank and Captain Adrahil the left. Finally, Captain Eanil commanded the Southern army stationed at Pelargir. By TA 3019, it seems likely that Gondor no longer maintained two full armies, due to significant population declines from the Kinstrife, the Great Plague, and multiple conflicts against the Wainriders, Belchoth, Haredrim, and Corsairs of Umbar. To mobilize its armies, Gondor utilized a beacon system similar to that of the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine network extended 400 miles from eastern Anatolia to Constantinople, with beacons placed 60 miles apart. This arrangement allowed communication across the entire distance in just 1 hour. When lit, the beacons would signal the themes to mobilize along the beacon line, coordinating with the Imperial Tagmata as they gathered forces from various regions. Gondor employed two lines of beacons along the borders of the mountain range. The northern line was designated for alerting Rohan, while the southern line facilitated the mobilization of Gondor's own forces, extending to Belfalas in the south. Gondor's military was divided into two primary branches. The professional army, funded and equipped by the state, featured divisions led by captains, who may have reported to a captain general. The army primarily consisted of light to heavy infantry, archers, and a small cavalry contingent. Much like its sister kingdom of Arnor, Gondor possessed a system of knighthood, with the title Ota referring to a trained warrior not yet elevated to the rank of Roquen or knight, which was likely reserved for the affluent who could afford horses and heavy equipment, such as the Swan-knights. In times of need, militias were formed from non-professional soldiers, who were generally less equipped, as seen in the case of Galasgil's poorly armed hunters and villagers. Command of militias likely fell to the king, steward, or captain general, reflecting Gondor's history of civil strife and the need to prevent uprisings. A significant part of the professional army maintained permanent garrisons across Gondor's cities, outposts, walls, and beacon towers. In TA 3019, Denethor II ordered Faramir to command the garrisons at Ramos-et-Chor and Osgiliath, with the aim of inflicting 10 times the losses on any enemy if they attempted to cross the Anduin. Faramir later fortified the garrison at Caer Andros, a strategic island in the river. The Gondorian armed forces included several special forces branches, such as the Guards of the Citadel, elite swordsmen tasked with protecting the White Tower. Entitled to wear the livery of the heirs of Elendil, the Guards of the Citadel were recognized by their distinctive mithril helmets and tall decorative wings. They comprised at least 3 companies, with infantry and messengers only on horseback. The captain of the White Tower likely oversaw these guards, who may have had ties to the Warden of the Keys, a title held by Hurin the Tall. After the Battle of Pelennor Fields, Hurin the Tall commanded the remaining garrison at Minas Tirith, while the Army of the West marched on Morannon. Another special operations unit was Faramir's Rangers of Ithilien. Established during Steward Turin II's reign, these rangers operated from hidden refuges such as Henith-Anun. Under Faramir's leadership, they waged guerrilla warfare against Sauron, with about 200 to 300 soldiers. They wore green and brown camouflage and carried longbows and swords. On March 7, 3019, Frodo and Sam encountered Faramir's rangers during an engagement with Southron troops. Gondor traditionally maintained only a small cavalry force, relying on its ally Rohan for the majority of mounted troops, particularly during the Wainrider Wars, the Belchoth Wars, and the War of the Ring. However, Gondor did possess one elite cavalry unit. During Faramir's retreat from the Causeway Forts, pursued by Nazgûl, the steward Denethor II ordered Prince Imrahil to counterattack with his Swan-knights of Dol Amroth. These noble knights, characterized by their tall stature and striking features, were of Númenorian descent and rumored to have traces of elvish heritage. They rode in full harness on grey horses and played a crucial role in the Battle of the Pelennor Fields and the campaign at Morannon. During its golden age, Gondor boasted the most formidable navy since the days of Númenor, renowned for its seafaring skills and naval warfare. 4 rulers were honoured with the title of Ship King: Turanan Falastur, Eanil I, Ciarandil I, and Ciahathia Mendesil I. However, following the Kinstrife, Gondor's fleet was fractured. In TA 1448, the sons of Castamir gathered what remained in Peligir and fled to Umbar, where they established the Corsairs of Umbar. This loss not only diminished Gondor's naval strength, but also created a long-lasting naval threat. For centuries, the Corsairs raided Gondor's coasts, particularly targeting the city of Peligir. They destroyed Gondor's drummonds, enslaved its populace, and killed many of its kings and nobles. Although Gondor temporarily reconquered Umbar in TA 1810, it lost it once more to the Wainriders just 46 years later. During the long winter, the Corsairs attacked Gondor's shores with 3 fleets, but were ultimately repelled by Steward Beragon's forces. In TA 2930, Aragorn conducted a successful raid on Umbar, overthrowing the captain of the haven. By the time of the War of the Ring, Gondor's naval strength had severely declined, and the Corsairs were able to dominate the coast with just 50 ships. Gondor's naval forces were overseen by captains of the ships, akin to the fief system in its land forces. Gondor's drummonds, though formidable, were of lesser quality compared to their Númenorian predecessors, which were renowned for their 5 masts and mighty rowing teams that enabled them to carry hundreds of troops across vast oceans. While Gondor's ships could navigate the Anduin River and the coastal waters of the Bay of Belfalas, they did not constitute a true blue water navy. Nevertheless, Gondor retained some of Númenor's infantry marine tactics and traditions, ensuring proficiency in amphibious and boarding operations. Gondor's military was structured for defense in depth, designed to slow invaders while yielding tactical space. Espionage played a crucial role in border defense, particularly through the use of Palantiri to monitor enemy movements. Gondor also developed a robust intelligence system. Steward Cirion in TA 2489 dispatched scouts and spies into the lands between Mirkwood and Dagorlad, and later the Rangers of Ithilien played a crucial role in monitoring enemy movements in southern Gondor. Gondor's defense relied on several layers, including her navy, the Rangers of Ithilien, crossings of the Anduin, numerous outposts and fortresses, Ramesachor, fiefdom defenses, the Pelennor Fields, and the capital Minas Tirith. This structured approach allowed the professional army and garrisons to gradually pull back, avoiding reliance on a single defensive position. During the War of the Ring, Sauron's assault began with attacks on Caer Andros and Osgiliath. Faramir led the defense of Ramesachor, facilitating the retreat of wounded soldiers to the healing houses of Minas Tirith. Ramesachor served as a defensive wall surrounding Pelennor, featuring 2 causeway forts. Although too extensive to defend against a serious invasion, it effectively deterred small-scale raids and enabled a quick retreat to Osgiliath. As Sauron's forces approached Minas Tirith, they faced cavalry countercharges that disrupted their advance. Gondor's beacon system allowed for calls for aid from allies, notably the Rohirrim, who supported Gondor against various invaders throughout the Third Age, including Easterlings, Southrons, Corsairs, and Sauron. These layers of defense acted to delay and inflict casualties on the enemy until they reached the final line of defense at Minas Tirith. However, while Gondor remained defensively sound, its declining population in the later Third Age meant it was unable to mount effective offensives against its enemies. Originally known as Minas Anor, Minas Tirith was constructed on the Hill of Guard at Mount Mindolluin and consisted of 7 concentric tiers. The outer city wall was black, made from materials like orthanc, and was said to be vulnerable only to earthquakes. Each level featured gates facing different directions, with the first level housing Rath Caledine and the Great Gate. The 6th level contained stables, the Houses of Healing, Fen Hollen, and Rath Dinan. The 7th level was home to the guards of the Citadel, responsible for defending the city's strongest point, the 7th Gate, surrounded by high walls and battlements. Within the Citadel were the Court of the Fountain and the Tower of Ecthelion, bringing the city's total elevation to 1,000 feet. It featured a court with the White Tree, the King's House, accommodations for the steward, barracks for the Citadel Guard, and various buildings for guests and workers. The Gondorian soldiers, who descended from Númenorians, likely engaged in combat using phalanx formations, such as the defensive Thangale, consisting of tightly pressed ranks that created a formidable shield barrier. This formation was designed for flexibility, capable of bending or curving to counter flanking maneuvers, similar to the Scottish Sheltron, the Greek phalanx, or the Roman testudo. Offensively, they may have utilized the Durnaith, a wedge formation executed over short distances to disrupt enemy ranks. The success of the Durnaith depended on the Gondorians' superior size and strength. While they were effective in close combat, it was their long-range prowess that instilled the greatest fear in their adversaries. The Kingdom of Gondor likely possessed the greatest variety of weapons and armor in Middle-earth's Third Age. Their extensive production of domestically forged weapons and armor even enabled them to supply their ally of Rohan. The diversity of Gondor's arms is evident when the captains of the Outlands arrive at Minas Tirith. For instance, Old Forlong's men wore mail armor and black helmets, and were armed with long heavy spears and great battle axes. In contrast, the men of Blackroot were equipped with bows, the Green Hills men resembled rangers, and Dol Amroth's knights donned full harness. Gondorians were known to wield a range of weapons, including swords, knives, bows, hauberks, spears, axes, and shields. Most descriptions of Gondorian armor focus on ring mail, with little indication of plate armor. The tall helmets worn by the guards of the citadel were made of mithril, suggesting that Gondor had access to this precious metal. Given their preference for phalanx tactics, it is likely that most Gondorian soldiers primarily wielded spears, with shields and swords as secondary weapons. Tolkien drew inspiration from various real-world civilizations in his creation of Gondor. In a letter to an acquaintance, he identified Peligir and Losanach with Venice and Assisi respectively. In another letter to Milton Waldman, he described Gondor as the half-ruinous Byzantine city of Minas Tirith, whose history fades slowly to decayed Middle Age, a kind of proud, venerable, but increasingly impotent Byzantium. Many fans have noted parallels between the gradual dissolution of the Western Roman Empire and Arnor, while Gondor's endurance resembles that of the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire, which long outlasted its Western counterpart, much like Gondor outlasted Arnor. Just as Byzantium assimilated groups of so-called barbarian peoples, like the Slavs and Avars, Gondor similarly incorporated the Northmen and other middlemen. Moreover, just as Byzantium served as a buffer between Europe and Islam, Gondor acted as a barrier against Mordor for the northern realms. Minas Tirith, in many ways, mirrors the history of Constantinople. Tolkien also saw connections between Gondor and ancient Egypt, particularly their shared fascination with ancestry, tombs, and monumental architecture. Comparisons have been drawn between the colossal statues of Memnon in Egypt and the statues of Isildur and Anarion in Gondor. Tolkien described the crown of Gondor as very tall, like that of Egypt, but with wings attached, not set straight back but at an angle. Additionally, the myth that ancient Egypt was a colony of Atlantis parallels the stories of Númenor with Arnor and Gondor. Finally, Tolkien compared the ruling stewards of Gondor to the Carolingians of France, who descended from Charlemagne's line. Overall, the ailing empire of Gondor lends itself to numerous past-fallen civilizations. More videos on the military customs, culture, and real-life inspirations of Middle-earth are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Wizards and Warriors channel, and we will catch you on the next one.